All right, thank you. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavalabha Girivaradari Gopi Janavalabha Girivaradari Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamuna Tiravanacharya Yamuna Tiravanacharya Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Kunja Bihari Jai Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivajrakacharya Ashtottara Shatashi Śrīmad Grace Asa Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada ki jai, Kantaraj Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam ki jai. All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. Just need the book. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. 6th Canto. Prescribed duties for mankind. Chapter 7. Indra offends Brihaspati. Text 15. So if everybody could please repeat after me. Taham Ācāryaṁ Agada Dishanam Dvijam Prasadiyeshaye Nishataha Krishna Tachcharanam Sprisham Ataham Ācāryaṁ Gada Dishanam Dvijam Prasadiyeshaye Nishata Krishna touch charanam sprishan. Taham amarācāryaṁ. Gada dishanam dijam. Prasadiyasye nishata. Krishna touch charanam sprishan. Taham amarācāryaṁ. Gada dishanam dijam. Prasadiyasye nishata. Krishna touch charanam sprishan.
Ataham amarācāryaṁ. Agādha dishanam vijam.
Ataham amarācāryaṁ. Agādha dishanam dijam. Prasadiyasye nishtaha. Krishna touch charanam sprishan.
Therefore, I, Ācāryaṁ, the spiritual master of the demigods, Gada Dishanam, whose spiritual knowledge is deep, Vijam, the perfect Brahman, Prasadiyasye, I shall please, Nishataha, without duplicity, Krishna, with my head, Tat Charanam, his lotus feet, Sprishan, touching. Translation, commentary by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. King Indra said, "Therefore, with great frankness and without duplicity, I shall now bow my head at the lotus feet of Brihaspati, the spiritual master of the demigods. Because he is in the mode of goodness, he is fully aware of all knowledge and is the best of the Brahmins. Now I shall touch his lotus feet and offer my obeisances unto him to try to satisfy him." Purport. Coming to his senses, King Indra realized that he was not a very sincere disciple of his spiritual master Brihaspati. Therefore he decided that henceforward he would be nishata, non-duplicitous. Nishata Krishna touch charanam sprishan. He decided to touch his head to the feet of his spiritual master. From this example, we should learn this principle enunciated by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. Yasya prasada bhagavat prasado yasya prasada nagati katopi. By the mercy of the spiritual master, one is benedicted by the mercy of Krishna. Without the grace of the spiritual master, one cannot make any advancement. A disciple should never be a hypocrite or be unfaithful to his spiritual master. In Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam 11.17.27, the spiritual master is also called ācārya. Ācāryaṁ vijānīyān. The Supreme Personality of Godhead says that one should respect the spiritual master, accepting him as the Lord himself. Nāvamanyeta karhicit. One should not disrespect the ācārya at any time. martya-buddhyāsūyeta. One should never think the ācārya an ordinary person. Familiarity sometimes breeds contempt, but one should be very careful in one's dealings with the ācārya. Agada dishanam dvijam. The ācārya is a perfect Brahman and has unlimited intelligence in guiding the activities of his disciple. It's quite a statement there, right? Has unlimited intelligence in guiding the activities of his disciple. Therefore, Krishna advises in Bhagavad Gita 4.34, Tad vidhi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya upadakshantite jnanam jnaninas tattvadarshanaha. Just try to learn the truth by approaching a spiritual master. Inquire from him submissively and render service unto him. The self-realized soul can impart knowledge unto you because he has seen the truth. One should fully surrender unto the spiritual master, and with service, sevaya, one should approach him for further spiritual enlightenment. Om Jnana-timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakya Chakshulabhaditam Meni Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Mukham Karidvachalam Pangam Langayate Girim Yat Kripa Tamaham Bande Shri Gurundinitadinam Bhaja Kapladubhishcha Kripa Sindhu Bevacha Patitanam Pavaribhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhaktivinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Translation again. King Indra said, "Therefore, with great frankness and without duplicity, I shall now bow my head at the lotus feet of Brihaspati, the spiritual master of the demigods. Because he is in the mode of goodness, he is fully aware of all knowledge and is the best of the Brahmins. Now I shall touch his lotus feet and offer my obeisances unto him to try to satisfy him." We're continuing this particular account of Indra offending his spiritual master, Brihaspati. Of course, Indra is the king of heaven, so he has a lot of opulence, like we've been discussing, inconceivable amounts of opulence. And he became intoxicated by that. And his spiritual master walked in, and he didn't give him any basic respect, what to speak of the special respect that is meant to be given to the spiritual master. So now Indra, he's been lamenting and feeling regret. Indra, after all, is a devotee. He just sometimes loses control. It's easy sometimes to be critical of such personality. He lost control, just see, but just like people, they may say, it's easy to criticize someone, okay, they won the lottery and they just spoiled all their money. I would never do that, People may think, oh, I would never do that. I would use it properly, definitely. But if one, we see that sometimes people who, they may think like that they could use wealth properly, but then we see they become wealthy and they don't use it properly. So it's easy to be critical. It's easy to be critical of people, for example, those who are having a lot of opulence, be critical in the sense of, oh, they're not using it properly. I would use it properly. But again, we see that when people do get it, they don't use it properly either. Just like Srila Prabhupada, he mentions in the pastimes of the Gundicha Marjana, the cleansing of the temple, in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's pastimes. And Srila Prabhupada explains that this cleansing of the temple is also, could be seen as cleansing our heart. And he mentions different anarthas or different unwanted things in the heart that need to be removed. So one of the things is mentioned there that sometimes people think, means that we're talking about devotees. Sometimes devotees think that, yes, I will do business, and then I will make lots of money for Krishna. And then I will use that money for Krishna. So now that in and of itself is not an anartha, necessarily, right? But he mentions later on how sometimes people do that. Yes, I'll make lots of money and I'll use it for Krishna. But then later on, they don't use it for Krishna. They just use it for themselves. And then they keep on, going in that direction. So it's easy for us to say, oh, look at Indra. Oh, he was intoxicated. He lost control. I mean, it shouldn't be a surprise how much material opulence, considering how much material opulence he has. I mean, people in this world, they get proud over whatever. I mean, some small amount of opulence and some whatever, some car. Sometimes the brahmacharis or the monks in the temple, they say you get proud, I got my own room, or I got this or that, or it's like, so Indra really had something to be proud about. So yeah, he lost control. But then, being a good soul, being a devotee of Krishna, he came to his senses. And he realized that I'm not a very sincere disciple of my spiritual master, Brihaspati. And therefore he decided, henceforward I will be non-duplicitous. Henceforward I will be a good disciple. I will touch my feet, I will touch the feet of my spiritual master and offer obeisances, and then as Srila Prabhupada explains in the purport, the necessity of this. The disciple should never be a hypocrite or be unfaithful to a spiritual master. The spiritual master is called Ācārya and should be seen as non-different from Krishna, Sakshadharitena Samasta Shastra, and shouldn't be disrespected in any way or at any time. And they should not be seen as an ordinary person. And as the saying goes, familiarity breeds contempt, which is interesting. Prabhupada says here, familiarity sometimes breeds contempt. When you study this book by Bhakti Vikas Swami, Bhakti Siddhanta Vaibhava, it's interesting reading the biographies of some of the disciples of Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. But Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he had one disciple who was quite familiar with him, like in a way in which other disciples wouldn't even think of. Like, for example, it said that Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur would accept a massage from this disciple every night before resting, like massaging his legs. But it said if this disciple somehow or other, for this reason or that reason, he showed up late to Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur's room, and if the light was off, he would knock on the door, say, "Let me in." Most people, if the light's off, if the spiritual master's light's off, then you don't, But he would knock on the door, "Let me in. I want to do my service." And also, there's a time where it was a lot of disciples would never think of, dealing with their spiritual master, like Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. But Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he's wearing some new watch. Somebody gave him a watch or whatever. And this disciple, he started joking with him. Guru Maharaj, I see the new watch you got, kind of. Anyways. But they did have a very affectionate relationship, and it was quite a unique, one. And mostly this type of treatment from this disciple, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, would accept. Of course, in this particular case, I think he kind of, chided him a bit for making that statement about the watch. But the general principle is, yes, we don't want to become too familiar. We don't want to, because becoming familiar with the spiritual master, we start seeing the spiritual master with a critical eye, which a disciple shouldn't do. Because this critical eye, it could turn into very ugly. It could turn into very ugly future for the disciple. Like Prabhupada had one disciple, which which he became critical of Srila Prabhupada, very critical. And he went up to Srila Prabhupada and said, more or less, can you please bless me to find a real spiritual master? And Tamal Krishna Goswami, he said that he was there, and Prabhupada said something like, yes, I bless you that you won't find a spiritual master for the next 10,000 lives, something like that. But it's interesting, Prabhupada, he actually sent a letter out to all of the temples, and he said, do not let this person in. He has become a venomous serpent, so don't let him in. Generally, Prabhupada wouldn't do that with people, practically never. But interesting enough is that although this person was so offensive to Prabhupada, I mean, I told you my little thing the other day about these devotees who I was kind of trying to help them and guide them in different ways in their spiritual life, and they became fundamentalist, fanatical Christians. And they came here the other day, and they wanted to go on a walk, and I thought maybe they want to just talk or whatever. But yeah, it turned into this very. I mean, I think I controlled myself. I was composed, but it turned a very ugly thing in the sense that they were just very offensive towards Krishna, towards Prabhupada, towards me as a soul. It was very offensive, and it was an interesting experience, having somebody kind of, you're trying to help and encourage, and them just completely turning on you. I'm going to hell, and, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So this is a small example, but this example with Prabhupada and his disciple, I mean, is very offensive. But although it was so offensive, about 2 weeks later, Prabhupada asked, how is this person, how is Nittai doing? His name is Nittai. How is Nittai doing? How is this person doing? Quite interesting, actually. Because most people just write him off, like, that's it. Like, I don't want to hear his name. I don't want to think about him. I don't want to. But Prabhupada asked, how is he doing? So you can see how merciful Srila Prabhupada is. So yeah, it's the duty of the disciple to follow the instructions of the spiritual master. And sometimes we see that the disciples, they may want some special instructions. Just like, for example, His Holiness Tamal Krishna Goswami, he was meeting with one disciple of his in Dallas, and Maharaj was going on a trip, traveling. And the disciple said, "Oh, Gurudev, can you give me some special instructions for when you're gone?" And this devotee was also quite new, so he said, "Can you give me some special instructions?" And then Tamal Krishna Goswami said, "How about following the 4 regular principles and chanting 16 rounds? Is that good enough?" And he left it like that. He left it that was his special instructions. So, but it's an interesting point because Prabhupada would stress that over again. Okay, chant 16 rounds, follow the 4 regular principles. In his letter, he would say this a lot. And of course, you could say these are the basic foundation of spiritual life. But we have to do them. We have to follow the 4 regular principles. We have to chant 16 rounds before really we could talk about higher realms of devotion and this and that. It's very easy, right? We could get any book we want nowadays in a minute, right? Go to the internet, download whatever. Just being spiritual books, very high level books from the Goswamis, whatever, dealing with Radha and Krishna's pastimes. But before we go into that realm, first we have to just really understand and follow the basic principles. Four principles and chanted 16 rounds without fail. And we see that there's many tricks that the illusory energy will test us with in terms of so many reasons not to surrender to Krishna. If we're in the mode of ignorance, predominantly, or if we're affected by the mode of ignorance, then the reason not to surrender to Krishna is we're just lazy and ignorant and, right, just no interest or whatever. So you could say that's an excuse from the mode of ignorance, but excuse from the mode of passion is we're too busy thinking about material enjoyment and accumulating stuff that we just don't make any time for this. Hey Vaishnava, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
We don't make any time for really surrendering to Krishna. We're just busy with other stuff. Now the excuse of the mode of goodness, it's a very interesting one. Excuse of the mode of goodness is it becomes like analyze Krishna consciousness to death intellectually. Analyze Krishna consciousness to death intellectually, but never surrender. These are like the academic people of the world. I mean, they analyze, they know Bhagavad Gita, they know Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, they know it better than most devotees, but they don't surrender. But also devotees have to be careful about that. How is my spiritual master, what is he thinking of me, and how should this relationship operate? And let me analyze it from a psychoanalytical, psychological perspective, and what's going on here, and what am I feeling, and how is he treating me, and how is he reciprocating, and what's the dynamics here, and do I need to go to guru-disciple therapy, and like what's happening here, and let me just like really analyze everything. It's okay to analyze things, it's a function of intelligence, but to analyze it to death and not, you could say, move on to the real business is unfortunate. It doesn't necessarily have to be a product of the mode of goodness either. It could be a product of the mode of ignorance and passion. But the intellectuals really get into it. Devotees whose minds are really active, they really get into it. Prabhupada makes it very simple. You're a disciple, and the spiritual master is the guru. He gives instructions based on scripture, and you follow. And you'll make advancement in Krishna consciousness. Yasya prasada bhagavat prasada yasya prasada nakatikatopi. That by the mercy of the spiritual master, one is benedicted by the mercy of Krishna. Without the grace of the spiritual master, one cannot make any advancement. It's pretty clear. It's like Srila Prabhupada would say, Krishna consciousness is simple for the simple, right? And what was the other second part? Difficult for the crooked. So now I'll just say, hey, well, what are you calling me crooked here? Am I calling myself crooked? The idea is that the living entities may have crooked tendencies. Doesn't mean no one is absolutely crooked, right? It means there's some crooked tendencies. So, and Maya also provides these type of conceptions, oh, hey, be crooked, So what I'm saying is that this has to be controlled, this has to be purified, this has to be given up. And therefore, that's what Prabhupada's saying, to be non-duplicitous, to be straightforward, to be simple. Because after all, it is very simple. But we get what we put into it. It says that the spiritual master has unlimited intelligence to guide the disciple. That's a lot of intelligence. And do we have faith in that? Do we have faith that our spiritual master has unlimited intelligence? We could ask ourselves that. We should have faith in that statement. Not thinking, oh, my spiritual master, he doesn't understand me. He can't give me good advice and this and that. Like I was joking with the Mogali the other day that, I mean, it shouldn't be like this, but sometimes we see the cases like modern discipleship is, the disciple asks the spiritual master for some advice, and then the disciple says, hey, thanks for the good advice, but I'm going to do whatever I want. Shouldn't be like that. But we get what we put into it, just like, for example, Ācārya. Ācārya, he means from the Mahabharata, not Ācārya, now Sri Krishna Chaitanya Swami. Ācārya from the Mahabharata. He wanted, who did he want as his spiritual master? Yeah, Ācārya. Why? Why did he want him? Yeah, so he could be an expert, right? Warrior, whatever, shooting arrows. But Ācārya didn't accept him, so Ācārya said, all right, well, I'll just accept him without him accepting me. And he made a morti of Ācārya, he's worshiping him, and he became quite a good, right, archer, yeah. But then Ācārya, somehow they found out about it or heard about it, and then he said, what are you doing? And he said, I'm worshiping you, Gurudev. And then Ācārya said, I didn't accept you. And he said, no, you're my Gurudev. And then Ācārya said, okay, well, if you're my disciple, then I want some Guru Dakshin. And then Ācārya said, sure. So you know what Ācārya asked for the dakshin? Huh? His thumb, right? Thumbs, yeah. And of course, Ācārya did it, and some people glorify him for that, right? He did it. But the point is, the main point is that you get what you put into the relationship. If you cheat, you're going to be cheated. If we don't put in the effort, then we're not going to get the result, or we're going to get a bad result. Lose it. Well, yes.
I know, but he didn't say that.
Well, thumbs, because then he can't shoot the arrows. So in other words, the whole reason why he was worshiping Ācārya was to become this expert archer, and then he lost his thumbs, and then he can't, do that anymore. So Ācārya took that away from him. So he was a loser in that sense, after all. So therefore, we approach the spiritual master in a particular way, not how we think he should be approached. We may think we should approach a spiritual master in so many different ways, right? But we approach the spiritual master how it says we should approach a spiritual master in Scripture. That's how we approach a spiritual master. Not by all types of imaginative or speculative ways. So it says, Tadvidhi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya upadakshantite jnanam jnaninas tattva darshanaha. So try to learn the truth. The spiritual master he's communicating truth to the disciple. Inquire. So we have to inquire. We have to ask questions submissively, and render service unto him. So we have to render service, practical service. And we have to render service to the devotees also. There has to be service to the devotees. We can't just say, I'm serving Krishna. Krishna is not so impressed by that. But we have to render service to the devotees. This is a lower level, just to be interested in Krishna. Higher levels to be interested in Krishna's devotees. Who could give the Shastric evidence? One who says he is my devotee, Krishna says, right? One who says he is my devotee is not my devotee, but one who is a devotee of my devotee is my real devotee, right? This is from the, Āradanam sarvesham, Vishnu Āradanam param. There's another, so we have to render service submissively, inquire, and then what happens? Then the self-realized soul can impart knowledge unto you because he has seen the truth. So then the knowledge will awaken, divya jnana will awaken within the heart. But it doesn't necessarily awaken just by simply hearing classes and understanding some facts and figures of Krishna consciousness, analyzing it to death or not analyzing it to death, not analyzing it at all, or somewhere in the middle. The realization doesn't come from that. The realization comes from surrendering to the spiritual master by being humble and inquiring and serving. That's where the realization comes from. So it's always a good thing to remember. Okay, does anybody have any question or comment? Yes, all right. Yugo Kirtan, Prabhu. We're happy to hear from you.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you so much. I was thinking about what you're saying about spiritual master, like following the instructions of spiritual master, like the whole purport basically. And I'm thinking like, especially now in our movement, it's practically impossible to serve the spiritual master or directly associate or anything. So basically it comes down to just serving your superiors or following instructions of superiors. Yeah. But then I mean, theoretically I understand that it is basically the same because they are representatives of spiritual master. But with the level of like the purport was saying, a spiritual master is Ācārya, right? Yeah. But the superiors, of course, they are much more elevated than we are. But at the same time, they are probably not at the level of Ācārya, right? So in that case, it will become important for us also to be little academic, to be understanding the shastras, reading them, so that we can understand whatever they are saying is according to like whatever scriptural injunctions. And I'm not saying about like it's not always like black and white, like the instruction is either like go break 4 regulatory principles or follow
go take a pilgrimage to Las Vegas.
It's not like so.
No,
black
that's
and
all right.
white.
I'm not going to do it.
It's generally very like gray area wherein we are not sure if the instruction that is coming from a superior, if it's like it's not in either of the categories, like whether to follow or not follow, because some statements from the shastras may justify to do it, some statements may justify to not do it. So,
it's difficult. It's a problem because the spiritual master's supposed to be is by definition transparent via medium, to Krishna, right? The direct connection. So it's a problem. I mean, for example, within ISKCON they have these systems which are good in many ways, make sense, but they have systems of like mentors, like a person has a mentor, right? Especially within India and Ukraine and Russian places, in Naranjana Swami and Ukraine, Radhanath Swami and others in India. So the system's good. There's a mentor, and that mentor is like takes care of a number of devotees, their personal issues and problems and things they need to discuss. And so I was just, of course, one is fortunate if they have a advanced mentor, and but sometimes theoretically it could be a problem, because what if the mentor, like I was saying to a devotee, what if your mentor becomes mental? Means he's not or she's not quoting scripture, or it's just some kind of sentiment, or in other words, they're not well trained. Or maybe their false ego starts coming into the equation. They're guiding you, and maybe they start seeing you as like their disciple, and it becomes like a false ego thing. I mean, I'm sorry to mention, because we don't like, this type of stuff happening, but theoretically these things could happen. So like you're saying, there's like this gray area. Okay, they're not telling you to do something like sinful, but then you're also wondering, is this the best advice? Like, what's going on here? Is it like something in the middle, and how am I supposed to? So yeah, it could be challenging. But therefore much of our advancement in Krishna consciousness also relies on our making the right choices, In other words, having enough intelligence to do that. Like it says, if one is, I'm just thinking of that conversation Prabhupada had. I think was he having it with Jayadvaita Swami? Something where Prabhupada, he I know where he was having it. He was having it with, it's in my spiritual master's book, Watering the Seed. Swanaskaraj Swami's book, Watering the Seed. Which, by the way, this Juhu book and especially the Juhu book has very powerful instructions for ISKCON and devotees in general. It's a very powerful book.
That's the building.
Yeah. But in Watering the Seed, there's a section there where Srila Prabhupada is talking with disciples about people going to Radhakund, the most holy place in the universe. This is, right? But he's specifically mentioning unqualified people going there. And he's saying, because in the last verses of the Nectar Instruction, it says, yes, you should go there, and with the body surcharged with the spiritual energy, you should serve, and so on. Radha and Krishna meditate on their pastimes and reside at Radhakund. So Prabhupada was critical of his disciples going there because he felt they were unqualified, or he knew they were unqualified. And then Prabhupada said, why don't they focus on the first verse of the book, Nectar Instruction? Vacho Vegam, Manasa Krodha Vegam, Jiva Vegam, controlling the mind, controlling the senses, right? Following the principles, chanting, really understanding that and following that. Because he was saying, Raghunath Das Goswami, he set the example of how to live at Radhakund. So many obeisances, thousands of obeisances every day, chanting 64 rounds or more, 192 rounds every day, living an austere life. He set the example. He said, this is Radhakund Vasi, resident. And he said, not that you go there, Prabhupada, not that you go there and you have 12 you have a dozen, he says, Devi Dasis. In other words, a man goes there and he has a bunch of women he's seen. But in that conversation, Srila Prabhupada, he makes a very interesting point. He says, if one is sincere, they will not make a mistake. Means people make mistakes, conditioned, mistakes are made, but like mistakes that are, you could say, suicidal mistakes in Krishna consciousness, he's making the point, they won't make that mistake. So in other words, what I'm saying is that we may be given advice and direction in Krishna consciousness by people, and we may be wondering how to advance and so on. But if we just focus on being sincere, means following the principles, chanting 16 rounds, doing everything we're supposed to do, trying to be humble, all of these different things, then we won't make a mistake, like a suicidal mistake. In other words, we'll be guided by Krishna. Yes, Srivada Prabhu.
Regard, I'd like to share an editing pastime, very pertinent to what you're discussing. I remember this book, The Nectar of Instruction. It was available in manuscript. You know, devotees were reading it before it was published. Somehow that it was. And I'm sitting in L.A. and reading this. We come to the last verse, and of course this was dictated by Prabhupada and transcribed like so many of his books. This time, this book was produced rather late. I think in '76 he wrote it. And so we get to this last verse, and this is the second paragraph. And it says, "It is stated that a devotee will at once develop pure love of Krishna in the wake of the gopis if he once takes a bath in Radhakund." And this is the way the manuscript read, which could, you know, the transcriber, they make mistakes sometimes. Srila Rupa Goswami recommends that even if one cannot live permanently on the banks of Radhakund, he should at least take a bath in the lake as many times as possible. This is the most important item in the execution of devotional service. Now just let that sink in a minute. This is the most important verse. Now, Jayarada Swami, he edited this book, and obviously this is not what Prabhupada intended. What he said was, this is a most important item in the execution of devotional service. Do you see the difference? So you can see how important it is to get these books straight. So it's an important thing, and one should try to do it if you're qualified. The most important, we have devotees going, you know, barely initiated, think I go to Radhakund.
Yeah, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he chose not to live there, and he made some statements, you know, out of his humility. But, yeah. So, but anyways, we should just have faith that Krishna will guide us. And yeah, we should serve our superiors and our authorities, and unless they're telling us to do bizarre things, then we should serve them, and yeah, we will make advancement. But ultimately, the advancement that we make, you know, we have to really, you know, our mentor or whoever is not going to do the work for us. You know, we have to make that advancement. Anyways, it's a big subject. Gurus, like, you know, you could have a 1,000,000-hour talk about this guru tattva. Okay, so we'll stop there, and everybody.
I have a question and a comment, if that's okay.
Wow. Okay.
The Prabhu said that nowadays in ISKCON, something about getting association of a guru is difficult or impossible. I just want to comment that Srila Prabhupada never, ever emphasized Vani, personal bodily association with the spiritual master. His resounding affirmation was that everything is there in his books, and that by carefully studying and sincerely trying to apply the teachings in his books, we have everything, nothing is lacking. And in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna, there's the verse, perhaps you can talk about this a bit, Bodhayantas parasparam katayantas chamam nityam tushanti cha ramanti cha. The devotees take great satisfaction and bliss from enlightening one another and conversing about me. So in the society, ISKCON, the Society of Devotees in general, we're meant to, you know, we come from, some of us, disgraceful backgrounds, other more enlightened, but we're all trying to make advancement and come to the level of devotees of Krishna. So we need to enlighten each other, and we need to take pleasure in discussing the philosophy and pastimes of Krishna. And as long as we keep that up, we're fine. So this katayantas chamam nityam principle that's in the Bhagavad Gita, perhaps you could say where that comes from and a little bit about that. It's very important.
Machita magata prana bodhayantas parasparam katayantas chamam nitya tushanti cha ramanti cha. So the devotees, they gather together and they enlighten each other, Krishna says, discussing about me, and they become, yeah, one of the 4 key verses of the Gita. In the 11th canto, which is the Uddhava Gita, right? Or the, yeah, Uddhava Gita, right? It says that the 11th canto, or Uddhava Gita is in the 11th canto, not the whole 11th canto, but there's a very wonderful verse, and you know this one, Dravida Prabhu, about, I'm sure you've heard it, but it's about when the devotees, they get together and they discuss me, then they're able to give up the desire for sense gratification. You know that one?
Yes.
Okay.
Parasparanokadadam pavanam bhagavadisha mitodate mitostustir nivita mitaratmana. This is one of the 9 yogendras, actually.
Yeah.
I don't think it's in the Uddhava Gita.
Okay.
But anyway, so it's describing the process of devotional service, and he says, when they get together, parasparanokadadam, literally hearing and chanting together, pavanam bhagavadisha, they're sharing the purifying glories of the Lord. And the result is mitoratir, they become very attracted to each other. You know, they develop friendship. Mitoratir,
Yes, friendship.
mutual satisfaction. And nivritir mitaratmana, and they develop detachment from everything else mutually.
Yes.
You know, they strengthen each other's detachment.
Yeah, that's the benefit of
And the next
devotee
verse
friendship.
has one of the most famous lines of all, Bhaktya-sanjatiya bhaktya. It goes on in the same mood, and it says, which has been analyzed, which one of the meanings is Bhaktya-sanjatiya bhaktya, by the sadhana bhakti you develop bhava bhakti, and then you describing ecstatic symptoms.
About Vani and Vapu, Vani means instructions of the Guru, Vapu the form. So, yes, out of the two, Vani is the most important. Follow the instructions. Vapu's there, and if we can, we should serve the form of the spiritual master and associate, as much as possible. Tamal Krishna Goswami, he said that. He gave some talk, and he said, "Yeah, I understand Vani is important, the most important. Vapu is, less important." But he said, "I made my arrangements." He said, wherever Prabhupada was in the world, I was there trying to be with him, personally. But I was also trying to, follow his instructions. So, yeah.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu, can I ask a question? Is it?
Yeah, you seem very eager. Yes, go for it.
Thank you. I have 2 questions. One is, you mentioned duplicity. Would you explain a little bit, like how in practical duplicity is?
Can you
can we
look it up on the phone? Somebody's duplicity, the exact definition. Or what's your second question?
And the second is, you mentioned about Radhakund.
Yes.
Not to go there.
So no, you could go. You could go. You should go.
Is it not to go? I mean, not you said, but my point is it good to take a bath, and even though we don't get much association, but if sometimes we don't have time, it's good to just take a bath and just come back. I mean, I know a good association is necessary,
I mean, there's different views on the topic. There's different Shastra quotes and quotes from Acharyas and so on. Some devotees, they say, I don't want to, I don't want to put my contaminated body into Radhakund. I'm not going to do it. So they go and they put some water and they put it on their head. Now that's a view that some devotees hold. And some devotees say, well, I mean, our acharyas did it, and there's injunctions that saying you could do it. So you very respectfully you go in there and Radhakund. But whatever the case is, we should go, and we should very respectfully, whether we submerge or whether we take the water on our head. The thing is, things have to be done in knowledge and devotion, and then we'll get the result. You have that duplicitous?
Thank you. Yeah, and I understand a little bit of the meaning, but the practical life, how do we...
Duplicity, wow, that's like... Deceitfulness, double dealing. Wow, it sounds really intense, huh? Double dealing? Double dealing. Yeah. So,
It means saying one thing, doing another.
yeah, saying one thing, doing another. So, what are some examples of this? Can anybody think of being duplicitous? Any of the devotees here in the audience could think of some examples of what's an example of being having duplicity in devotional service? Yes. Javeda Prabhu has an example, and then Jessica has an example, and
You got some position in a temple, say, you're a temple president, and you're preaching right from the book.
I like going after the temple presidents too. Yeah. I'm just joking.
This is theoretical.
Yeah.
And you're very strict with the devotees. You know, brahmacharya, you come and, empty your bank account, and this is what the Prabhupada standard. You don't have, and, you're preaching the 4 regs and everything, but on the side, you're taking some of that money and putting it in the Swiss bank account, you're making your plans and things like that.
They call it the bloop account.
I didn't know, first I heard of that one. But that's a
Kevin
thing that can
enlightened me
happen.
with that one.
And what happens often is that you start out, you're very strict, but then, you get weak in your sadhana, and so you start hedging like that. So
Yeah.
duplicitous.
Yeah, very good example. Okay, and then she has example. I was also thinking like a book distributor, for example, say, I'm going out, I mean, it's a great service. Like, for example, temple president's a great service, but you have to do it right. Book distributor, it's a great service, but then, maybe they're doing it for different reasons, for, being very proud or whatever. You say, I'm just doing it for the pleasure of Prabhupada, right? But I don't know, maybe they're doing it for their own kind of, yes.
Mine's a pretty basic example, but unfortunately, getting initiated and vowing to chant 16 rounds a day, and then it gets late. I've done 13. That's good enough. I'm going to go to bed, start over tomorrow, not making up the next day, and just kind of going on like that.
Yeah, not really chanting 16.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good example. So those are some things, Dhanvari.
Yes, thank you, Dravida Prabhu and Jessica and Balaram Prabhu. Very nice class and discussion.
Okay, thank you. All right. Grantaraj Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam ki jai.